Hello and welcome to one of your first lectures off the website. Hopefully the volume's all right for everybody, and if you notice, it is an audio-visual file, so you should be able to just put it into iTunes, and you can even put me on your iPod and carry me around everywhere with you. The main purpose of something like this is if you've missed class, it is your responsibility to make sure you catch up with things. In the event that the notes for the day are not done audio, you should be making sure you catch up with me after school or one of your peers in class. Also, your book has pretty much everything that we go over, but don't rely on just one source. Find out stuff that we went over from as many people as you can. Well, one of our first classes, we focused on the years 1865 to the 1900s. Eventually, we're going to be starting a unit called the Progressive Era. And when you think of the word progressive, you usually think of the word progress. This is going to be a time period where America goes from immigration to all of these different processes, fighting for our independence, fighting for our freedom, coming together as a nation, and it's like, now what? How do we move forward? How do we progress? So in this first section of the Progressive Era, we're going to be talking about why did we actually need a Progressive Era. So there must have been a time in this nation where things weren't going so well. That's why we needed to progress things. Anytime we take notes in this class, I always give you 3 questions that unit will probably focus on. So the first topic of why did we need a Progressive Era, by the end of the next couple of days, we should be able to answer the following 3 questions. During these years, who is coming to America? What were these new citizens told about the new nation? Why did they come here? And then the most important one is all of these immigrants come to America with their hopes and their dreams, but what is the reality? Remember, not everything in life has a sugar coating to it. So what is the reality these people are about to experience? Now, if you need to copy these notes as you go along, I suggest that you go back to the website and download the PowerPoint and not just the audio. Alright, so let's take on question number 1. During these years, 1865 to the 1900s, who is making up America? So where are these people coming from, and where are they settling? Now, this is a different world than we know today. For instance, most of Europe, a lot of those countries were still under empires. So for any of you from places like Poland, you were actually part of the German Empire, a little bit of the Russian Empire. People from Albania, you're down near Austria-Hungary. Anybody who is now from Turkey, that's something called the Ottoman Empire. But we're going to learn about all of that during World War I. That's really when those countries are first created. So in general, who is immigrating to America? Settling on the West Coast, we have immigrants from China and Korea. Primarily, those people will come in. They'll settle, areas like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and they helped with the economy out on the West Coast. We tend to focus more on the East Coast, just because we are from the East Coast, so it's easier to compare. So migrating or immigrating into the East Coast through Ellis Island, you had a lot of Western Europeans. That's the Italians, the Irish, the German. And you also had Eastern Europeans, which primarily at this point is a lot of Russian. And when they both came in, they are pretty much the main force behind what built America. The next thing that we talked about as a class were the ideas that these citizens brought to America, what they thought they were getting into when they showed up in this new nation. So I kind of asked people in class what they thought new immigrants coming to America came from, and a lot of people agreed on, these 5 things. They were looking for a new life, different opportunity, jobs, freedom, right? That's something that America's always stood for. And most of all, you could say this idea of American dream. The concept that if you came to America, you could come from nothing and be somebody. So we've all heard that. That is something very unique to America. Back in this time period, it was almost like a brand new country. There wasn't a lot of industry yet, and so the immigrants that came over, they are the ones building this new world. So the American dream was very possible. But unfortunately, in life, nothing is always as it seems. Another activity that we did in class was talked about where you might want to live if you did immigrate to America at this point. So I just gave them different scenarios of rooms they could rent in the different settings, this one being rural. So again, if you want to read this over more closely, I would go download the PowerPoint and maybe print that out. The second option students had, oops, let me go back, was a room for rent in an urban area. And I just asked people to share what they thought, pros and cons of these two. Now, what most people thought was they didn't want to be secluded out in the rural, farmland. It's a lot harder to fit in, especially when all of the people living out in these rural areas pretty much similar backgrounds, similar religions. So for most people, and this was definitely how immigrants felt coming to this country, they wanted to be in the urban cities where life was happening, where you could go to a saloon, you could, taste a different variety of cultures. Plus, that's where most of the jobs were. Unfortunately, the biggest downside of moving to the urban cities is that they became extremely overcrowded. Which leads us to the reality. What people are about to really experience when they show up to America. And this was just a funny quote. Now, they don't know who said this, but it was documented at Ellis Island that an immigrant said, "I came to America because I heard the streets were paved with gold. When I came here, I learned 3 things. First, the streets in America are not paved with gold. Second, streets in America are not paved at all. And third, I am expected to pave them." So do you get it? The fact that he had hoped all these stories were true about America sort of being the promised land. Then when he showed up here, everything was kind of dumpy, right? This is a brand new country. And the last thing that he says is sort of his joke, that yeah, we did expect the immigrants to help build this nation. And for the most part, it was done with their blood, sweat, and tears. One of the biggest things, and this was a concept that students learned about last year, was the idea of nativism. So immigrants new to America at the turn of the century experienced extreme hostility. That's anger. You could almost sort of see this as a racism type of thing. But we refer to it as nativism. Because when you think about it, the people that were native or born to this area, where were they from? The answer is England. They came looking for religious freedom, so when they settled, they brought Puritan and Protestant beliefs. But when you think about it, the new immigrants coming over, especially from Western Europe, some of them had the same background, same religion. What made them different was maybe, a little bit of skin color, but mostly language and cultural activities. So it's really not racism when you have the white settlers that were here and the white Europeans coming in. They're hating each other. So we refer to this historically as nativism. Why did people living in America fear these immigrants? Well, it was a big concept, sort of how we feel about immigrants today. We're afraid we're going to lose our jobs to them. We're afraid that they might have an impact on what we consider to be right for our nation. Alright, well that pretty much summed up the first day in class. We did a lot of discussing, so that's why it took so long to get through. But so far, you should be able to answer the following questions. Now these are great ways to practice. I always get the question of, should I write them in my notebook? Well, yeah, because guess where these are going to end up? you said a test or a quiz, you're absolutely correct. Alright, and again, I will refer you back to the PowerPoint slides that you can actually print out and have a copy of.